So this is the talk I would like to give on this situation. It's very multifaceted and very complicated, but I think that the key challenge right now is we're trying to prevent a second Fukushima from occurring. We tried to stop the first one, but we couldn't. And there's citizens working in Japan from Hokkaido to Kyushu pretty feverishly trying to prevent the second Fukushima and to end nuclear power in Japan, and also many, many lawyers working basically pro bono. But total, all of us, it's just a handful of people. And so with just that handful, it's quite clear we won't be able to stop something really bad from happening. We feel we're very concerned, and so we want to spread the word and get more people involved, and just speaking up, even though people aren't like working as activists full time, just to any chance, opportunity to get to tell Kyoto City or whoever how you feel that that's what's really important. Okay, so it's not just about how to prevent a second Fukushima, but how to bring this curtain down on an entire industry, which is the nuclear industry. And this is not an easy thing to do because it's so established. And the issues we work on, and most of the slides won't have this much writing on it, but it's just very multifaceted. We work on safety issues. This is an area we work a lot on because citizens do not have that much say on national policy. No matter how much we say great things about what kind of national policy we should have, it's just ignored. So we have to make it a situation where people are too concerned about the safety, or in lawsuits we win so that it can't be operated. So we work on earthquakes, volcanoes, serious accidents, off-site emergency planning, and I'll show you some of this work. And then electricity supply. This was a big issue after the Fukushima accident, saying, if we continue to shut all the nuclear power plants down, keep them down, we'll suffer blackouts, but it didn't happen. And actually Japan had zero nuclear power for nearly 2 years, and it was fine. And so everybody discovered that, we thought it was just an absolute necessary evil, but it wasn't. We didn't have to have it. But at the same time, carbon emissions went up because the fossil fuel plants kicked in. So we're having to address those issues. But that's lower down on the list. Right above that is economics. And this is the cost of electricity. People were told it's expensive because nuclear power isn't operating, which is false. Even before Fukushima, nuclear power was actually more costly than hydro or fossil fuels. But the public did not know that, and the way they set up the discussion, it looked like nuclear power is cheaper. And after Fukushima, of course, it is not cheaper at all. And the challenge of how to financially manage shutdown of all electric utility nuclear power plants. So this is that all these big utilities have built these nuclear power plants. They're very costly, and how do you give them up when they still could be operated? And so this is the really difficult issue. And the regional economy, because so many areas where nuclear power plants are located, receive subsidies and their jobs. So when you end an industry, you have to know how to do it. And with coal, when Japan ended it, basically just subsidized. And therefore, finally, those local places had no other way of sustaining itself, and many of them went bankrupt. So instead of just subsidizing, you have to have a better alternative offered. And then civil society and democratic process, you'll see how this is lacking, as you already probably know, in Japan. And this is the real problem. And then family value and ethics, economy versus other social values. And that's, do we want to worry about electric prices when then another Fukushima might happen? It's just disastrous for the environment, people's livelihoods, and also will end up costing a huge amount of money for Japan. A second one would probably have an economic effect that will last, half a century, depending on the size of the accident. Okay, often they say it's important to have a nuclear energy mix in Japan because Japan is not energy sufficient, so you have to have everything, including nuclear power. You have to have many things. Well, the falsity about that is that, say for example, if somebody's going to buy shares in companies, do you want to have a variety so that you have a few share companies where it's really bad stock? it's going to be really bad for you, but you need a variety, so you include those too. It doesn't make sense. So if it's bad stock, you shouldn't do it. And the other issue is, here I've said, it's not like all paths should be used or could be used, but that actually nuclear is preventing renewables from kicking in. One example would be that, for example, in Kyushu, all these companies started making renewable energy, wanted to sell it on the grid, but the grid had to be saved for the Sendai nuclear power plant restart. In other words, you make the product, you start a company, make the product, but you can't sell it because the grid is used up waiting for nuclear power to kick in. So it actually prevents renewables from moving forward. This is an important point about this whole issue. Okay, so now I am going to talk a lot about dangers, but that's because we have to keep talking about this so that people feel it's not worth it to continue nuclear power. This map shows the black signs are recorded earthquakes, okay, recorded earthquakes in the world. And the red are the nuclear power plants located in the world. And if you look at it, apart from California, where they coincide, and as you know, then they are being shut down in California. The only place that really coincides is Japan. So we're very unique in the fact that we have a lot of nuclear power plants in this very earthquake-prone land. So these are the active earthquake fault lines in Japan, and they're just all over the place, but also Fukui here is really riddled with them here. And so that's why we work a lot on earthquake issues to try to stop nuclear power plants. And in lawsuits, we work a lot on earthquake issues. I'm a head plaintiff of one of the lawsuits, the Oi nuclear power plant administrative lawsuit. We're suing the government to try to stop the Oi plant. That's this plant located in Fukui. And so, learn a lot about earthquakes and how to measure them, etc., predict them. Okay, and also volcanoes. And we're working actively on the volcano issue because if there's volcanic ash that goes on nuclear power plants, then it could be crippled by it and cause a severe accident. So we work a lot on volcano issues and how to estimate ash. This is Kagoshima, and right near here, we literally slosh through ash to go to the Kagoshima Prefecture nuclear section, power section, to talk about you should shut Sendai nuclear power plant down because there are too many volcanoes around it. And next is, as you know, the Fukushima Daiichi accident is ongoing. Maybe I should put the mic a little more distance. No, it's okay? Okay, it sounds like we're zooming. And so it's very ongoing, and you're probably reading in the newspapers about the tanks are being filled up. You can see there's a huge space here, unlike Takahama and Oi. But even then, the tanks of contaminated water are filling up, and they want to dump a whole lot into the ocean right now, and it's a big issue. And the other is, of course, the cost of the accident of this Fukushima one. Already, even a couple years ago, it was set at 21.5 trillion yen, and it'll be climbing. It's a huge amount that, of course, society has to pay for. Okay, so the dangers, this is very real, and that was during the Fukushima accident, right when it's ongoing. There was communication between the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission and the Japanese Atomic Energy Commission. And what they were discussing is if the spent nuclear fuel pool went at Fukushima Daiichi, what kind of problem would happen? How far will people have to evacuate? And Sandia National Laboratories in the US did an analysis, and it said 250 kilometers radius. So that would have included even parts of Tokyo. And it was out of sheer luck that the pool did not go. There was a malfunction, and it saved the day. So we're really close to really serious. I mean, it's disaster enough when you have thyroid cancer or you have had to evacuate for an individual. But it would have been a societal, even much greater disaster. So what this map does is show, if you do a a radius of 250 kilometers around all the nuclear power plants in Japan. It looks like this. And you can see that our area right here is very concentrated. In fact, we live in the largest city closest to the highest concentration of nuclear power plants in the world. It's hard to say, what is a concentration, how many reactors and how many kilometer distance, but we definitely are at the top. So this is like a priority concern for Kyoto prefectures and Kyoto City included. So, as I mentioned, there were 0 nuclear power plants operating for almost 2 years after Fukushima, but now recently more and more have gotten restarted. We haven't been able to stop it, so there are now 9 reactors operating. But there were a total of 54 reactors in Japan, and so before, about a third of electricity was made by nuclear power, pre-Fukushima, and now it's 8%. So for 8%, do we have to do this whole terrible emergency planning and decide that we have to live with nuclear power, etc.? That's the discussion that we should have. This figure of 33% seems maybe large to you, a third of the electricity before Fukushima, but this was held down to this figure because there was a really strong movement for decades, even starting from the mid-60s, constantly at every single location where power plants were about to be sited in Japan. And really, really strong movement by the fisher folk and farmers and the city people. And as a result, we were able to hold it down to 33%. Japan really wanted to be like France, independence maybe 80% or more of electricity, but it's citizen power of Japan that stopped that. But it's like a invisible saving of Japan, because when the Fukushima accident occurred, there were blackouts and everything, but we were able to handle it. And imagine what would have happened if the industry and government had their say and citizens weren't able to stop it. So often it's considered that civil society in Japan is very weak, citizen movements are weak, but what the citizen movement over those decades accomplished is, I think, really important. And even the citizens that did that are unaware, because all of society keeps saying, citizens are so weak, so weak, so weak. But I think it's a really important contribution that that citizens made over the decades. Okay, so now there are 16 reactors that are the utilities want to get started, and the government pretty much rubber stamps the restart, so we're trying to figure out how to prevent these 16 from going back online. And I could talk about each one, but then it's like I couldn't get on to other things. So if anybody wants to ask about any of these, well, please do. There are actually even a new reactor in Shimane that's about to get online. There's reactors that are in Oma that we're trying to stop from a new one being built that uses MOX fuel, which is a plutonium on uranium blend. And Kaminoseki down here, this has been fighting for decades and trying to keep it shut, not started construction. So that's ongoing. Okay, so as many of you may know, there was really strong anti-nuclear protest in front of the Prime Minister's office right after the accident. So even a year after, so June 2012, this is photo then. And of course, it's very hard to sustain this kind of thing, but there is a new change occurred because there people who had never ever been to a demonstration before, who never imagined that they would do anything like that, came and stood in front of the Prime Minister's office. So there was a real change in consciousness among citizens. But again, hard to sustain. So then it starts getting to be more like the core group that keeps going. This is last year. Every year we have a big march in Kyoto, and next year is March 10th. And we're preparing the same kind of demonstration on that weekend. Here, this is the first activist I ever met, let's see, 38 years ago. He was already going strong then. These are two women from Fukushima, evacuees, and they're fighting lawsuits now, and really active. She's also very active with Greenpeace and going and working with them on studying the level of contamination in Fukushima. And then other people we work with him on economic issues of nuclear power. We study Kansai Electric's Kaikei o Kangairu Kai, so the whole accounting and everything trying to get it from the economic angle. And then of course all the other citizens that are participating here. Now, even before Fukushima, there were warnings that citizens issued and scientists issued, and they were not heeded. And this just shows that each step of the way, step by step, we got closer to Fukushima. This was when there was an earthquake in Niigata, and black smoke came out of the largest nuclear power facility in the world, Kashiwazaki Kariwa, owned by Tokyo Electric. And immediately the next day, I organized a press conference at the Foreign Correspondents Club and also at the METI Press Club. So these are the two people. This is a scientist who is a seismologist that has warned about Genpatsu Shinsai, which means a nuclear disaster because of an earthquake. And his name is Ishibashi, and he's an earthquake seismologist. And citizens, this is Mr. Nakamoto of Kariwa Village. The citizens there have been warning since the late 70s, don't build a plant here because it's earthquake prone. And so the two of them came, and his part of his house, his storage place was crushed and everything. When he arrived at the press club, I was eating my box lunch, and he goes, "It's the first food I've seen." And so I gave him the remaining half of my lunch. That's how much he rushed to meet this press conference. And they spoke, and the room was jam-packed with foreign correspondents, and people kept asking questions, but we had to rush to the METI Press Club because it was already a reserved press conference. We got there, we waited 2.5 hours. They never got to speak because in this big room of about 100 members of the press, Tokyo Electric kept coming in, the government minister kept coming in, doing a press conference, on and on and on. And it's like, sorry, please wait more, sorry, please wait more. And we weren't able to get the message out that this is the last warning. Next time it's going to be a disaster, and you got to heed the warning. So that's what happened then, and actually the situation with the media hasn't changed that much since then. Restart. Most people most people want to phase out nuclear power in Japan. But again, the argument about blackouts or cost of electricity, all these things are being told people. But this is before a lot of restart happened. This is a year ago March. Mainichi newspaper, restart should go forward. It's about 25, a quarter of the Japanese people, but 55% said no, it should not go to restart. So now, we have a majority of people that really don't want restart because even the 26, there are some people that feel it's just a necessary evil. They don't really want nuclear power. There is a large majority that wants to phase out nuclear power. So we have all this sort of theoretical support, but it's sort of, then you're just sort of slugging away with a couple people here, a couple people there. Very weird situation. Okay, Prime Minister Koizumi, who during the time he was Prime Minister, kept approving restarts. He's pro-nuclear, he was a liberal Democrat. But after tired, he had an epiphany and going to the repository site, final repository site in Scandinavia, and said, "No, wow, nuclear power has got to end." And a very interesting interview was done with the Mainichi newspaper reporter, where the reporter asked, most people say it's irrational to say, let's stop all the nuclear power plants right now, meaning immediately, cold turkey. And he says, no, it's the reverse. If you don't commit to zero nuclear power now, it'll be difficult to make it zero in the future. And this is really true. This is a very wise statement. And now, so there is change, meaning two former prime ministers, he and Hosokawa, are going around, trying to get ending nuclear power, submitting a bill to end nuclear power. Also, the newly formed Constitution Democratic Party has submitted a bill to end nuclear power within 5 years, but the bill is going nowhere. One of the problems with that party is they don't oppose restart of nuclear power. So concretely, when a plant is about to restart, they don't go, no, don't restart it. And we're trying to argue it's so much easier to pass a bill saying let's end nuclear power if the dependence is low on nuclear power. But the more restarts you have, the more it's going to get hard to pass a law to say let's just end nuclear power completely within 5 years. Okay, so the cost of restarting nuclear power is considerable because now there are stricter regulations post-Fukushima. So utilities are paying about already, this is 3 years ago, 2.2 trillion yen on construction work to address safety measures. And this has been climbing, but this is the kind of investment that's being made and a lot of refurbishment being done before a restart is approved. So we're spending a lot of this money, which finally consumers have to pay, taxpayers have to pay. Okay, so again, I want to point this out. So this is our situation. So where do we go from here? Okay, then specific to our situation in Fukui. This is Lake Biwa here, and here's Fukui Prefecture, and there are all these reactors right here. And the circles are 30 kilometers from the plant. And so this is called the UPZ area where active evacuation has to occur. And these are the earthquake fault lines in the area. It's kind of hard to read. This is the land, and this is the ocean, right? And here's the Oi nuclear power plant, here's the Takahama nuclear power plant. And on this peninsula is fast reactor Monju, which is now shut, but it still has some fuel in there, and then Fugen, which has been shut, but it has all the spent fuel in there, so even if there is an earthquake, it could still cause a disaster. And the Mihama plant here. So these are the reactors in this area. And this is one of the big the faults that are at issue here, because it's very near these two plants. And so FOA, FOB, and Kumagawa Danso, we analyze those all the time. So this is the Oi plant, and the argument is, and you can see the lifting of the land, even if you're a layperson, you know, all this lifting of the land has occurred with earthquakes. But the argument is right where that plant is located, there's no active fault. So this is the aerial view of that same location. And the red lines are the lines that Kansai Electric drew before the plant was constructed, saying these are earthquake fault lines, but they're not active. One of them here, there was a trench made here. And they analyzed it and said it wasn't active, but when we looked at the sketching and the analysis, it did look active. And so we raised the issue, and many citizens raised the issue. We got 108 Diet members to say this should be reinvestigated. Lots of media, actually a multi-partisan group, citizens got organized of Diet members to arrive at the plant with earthquake experts and demand going into the plant, which Diet members have a right to do, Tachiurihigashi-cho, and went in and looked at where there could be an analysis made. And so front page headline, there'll be a re-investigation of this site. So it was a big, big deal. And this was the main fault line. Well, the long and the short of it is there was a trench built here. It was supposed to be 200 meters, but they made it much shorter. And Kansai Electric said, in the edge, they found a shattered fault line, and they go, oh, it was around here. They found a shattered fault line, and they said, oh, the F6 fault line didn't go this way. It went like this. And this shattered fault line is the F6, and we've looked at it, and it's not an active fault, so everything's okay. And that's how the investigation ended. But, you know, as a layperson, you think, okay, so if this red line wasn't real, and it was supposed to go this way, then what about all these other lines? You know, how real are these, or what's going on here, you know? There hasn't been really proper analysis of the plant. Anyway, we spent a lot of work and a lot of time on this, but lo and behold, the person who was the head was a member of the 5-member commission and the Nuclear Regulation Authority, Mr. Shimazaki, seismologist, is the one that said, no, it's okay, this plant can restart. Okay, subsequent to that, again, he had an epiphany. A Kumamoto earthquake happened, and he goes, that's bad. The Oi plant should not be restarted. So now his position is it should not be restarted. And he's actually offered testimony, even to plaintiff groups, saying that the same. And now he's having a battle with the current Nuclear Regulation Authority and really being demeaned and battered. But he's still holding strong. Then we have old nuclear power plants that are being refurbished right now. These are reactors were originally, when they went to the local sites, they want to operate for 20 years. Please let us build reactors. And the local authority said, okay. Then there was when it became 20, then they said, we'd like to extend. They'll have the license extended to 40 years. And so the local authorities there basically wanted to continue making money on nuclear, so they said yes, but now 40, we'd like to make it 6 years. And finally, the local authorities, even meaning the local town, Oi town, Takayama town, don't say they don't like it. So now for the first time, we have actually on-site governments, local towns saying we don't like extension of aging reactors, which is a real asset. But even then, there's huge cranes on several sites and there's been approval already for running these stones for 60 years. So we're really finding that it's a really important issue to fight. There's a lawsuit in Nagoya. I'm also a plaintiff of that and involved with those lawsuit meetings, trying to stop these old reactors from going online. Because if we allow that to happen, then it just keeps going on for much longer, because if everywhere reactors could operate up to 60 years, that's still a long way away before shutdown of everything. So that's what we're working on too. So aging, so we work a lot on aging of reactors, like reactor vessels and everything. So there's a lot of technical stuff involved. As I mentioned, seismic, you become kind of a semi-earthquake expert, and then volcanic ash, and then there's, brittle reactor vessels, because they're so embrittled that if you get cold water during an accident thrown in, it's like a big thick glass beer jug or something. If I talk about beer, maybe you already want to have your beer tonight, but anyway, a little bang, break, and everything inside will just come out. So we're trying to prevent that. Okay, so now the next 4 slides, I'm going to quickly go through these, but maybe you'll get a certain impression. Nuclear Regulation Authority, 5 commissioners. These are the people now who decide the regulation and look at each restart and say yes to the restarts. These are the mayors that are approving restart. Governor of Fukui, Ehime, Saga, and Kagoshima, and the towns inside those prefectures. That's the mayor of Takahama, that's the second row below, Oi, Ikata, Genkai, and Sendai. So these are, in Fukui Prefecture, and then in Shikoku, Ehime Prefecture, and then in Kyushu, which is Saga and Kagoshima prefectures. So you kind of, as citizens, you have to work on all those plants, right? But you kind of do you have an impression, kind of the group of people seem kind of maybe similar, maybe there's an impression. Maybe, do you have an impression? This is the Kagoshima Prefecture, kind of maybe an impression. I have to say, we're so used to this in Japan that when I say it in Japanese groups, do you have an impression? Everybody doesn't know what I'm talking about. So anyway, so this woman is pro-nuclear. So here she is. She's the one fighting it right now. And when I look at this pen that you use it for signing there too, you change your ink, she has the same pen, and her ink just goes out every, day or something. She's like working like crazy. Okay, so that's the situation. And this is the Fukui legislature, similar. And again, she's pro-nuclear and she's pro-nuclear. So that's her. And when I ever talk to her, it's like, do you realize this situation, this whole environment, is a sea of men saying everything is fine. Germany ended nuclear power, but guess what? It depends on French nuclear power, which is not true. Because in Europe, you sell and buy back and forth, that yes, in Germany, there is French nuclear power produced electricity coming in, but Germany sells to France, and net, France, who's a big nuclear power place, imports energy, and Germany exports to France net. But just the fact that sometimes the thing goes back and forth and it goes to Germany. In Fukui Prefecture, the big talk is that Germany ended nuclear power, but guess what? They're just dependent on nuclear energy coming from France. And so she says, how do I combat that when everybody is saying that? Things like that. It's just overwhelmed. Okay, so I gotta watch my time here, but just want to quickly go through the kind of countermeasures. This is the Genpatsu Zero no Kai, which is a multi-partisan group. This is very great because there are even liberal Democrats in there. And I'm sorry, this slide is before the Democratic Constitution Party started. I made this, but all sorts of parties are in there. And it's headed by a woman, Tomoko Abe. Of course, they're all men lined up, but it's different than just the government, as far as the mix of people. You can see Kono Taro is there. He's now foreign minister, so he quit this position, this membership when he became foreign minister, but he's avidly against the Rokasha reprocessing plant, and so he was a member then too. So there are Liberal Democrats in there too. And they're supporting the law to phase out nuclear power, but they are a set of legislators that aren't necessarily the most powerful in the Diet. This is the mayors for Nuclear Power Free Japan. We work with them a lot. I'm on the strategy committee, always Skype meetings, and it's headed by this woman, Uehara-san, and the former mayor of Tokaimura, which is very dependent completely on nuclear power. He is now very anti-nuclear, and he's a member. So about 100 mayors, half of them former mayors, and the other half current mayors. But again, all the mayors are so busy, it's really hard to move things forward. They make statements, but it's hard to really, make change. But it's a good effort that local mayors all around Japan are against nuclear power. This is the Citizens Commission on Nuclear Energy. This is a citizens panel, and working to kind of counter all the arguments that the government is making on nuclear energy. And it's a wide range of citizens working together, experts, scientists. And it's really hard work. The head of the group died suddenly, and another person became head, and that person died. And now it's the third person, Professor Oshima, he was at Ritsune, and now he's at Ryukoku University. So you can see that it's pretty hard work. Again, there's no really awareness to say, there are members that are women too, but look at, even the press conference of CCNE is all men lined up. But the lawyer standing there is really, there are whole teams of lawyers, as I mentioned, and he's really vocal in getting as many lawsuits in against nuclear power plants. And then we do have groups working on E-shift, energy shift, so in Tokyo mainly centered, working on change in energy policy, so that end of the work is being done. Okay, so just a few slides of how we meet with the government. And that's because, again, we can't decide policy, so we meet on each issue and try to make them follow their own regulations. So this is meeting with the nuclear the Nuclear Regulation Authority, regulatory agency, which is the bureaucracy for the authority. And we have meetings like this. We're going to meet again on the 16th, going to Tokyo on the volcanic ash issue. But at least here now, you start getting women. And this is Ms. Shimada, who's the head of Mihamano, or administrative head of Mihamano-kai, which is based in Osaka. Green Action has worked really closely with Mihamano-kai before. She's somebody to be feared. Anyway, this is me here. But we meet with the government. And I think Kansai dialect is pretty effective against bureaucrats. Or something. So here we are, and now, former Prime Minister Khan is also there. Some people who used to work for industry are now there. And then there's us here. And this woman too is like, she looks like really sweet and everything, and she's also, these two are like really, daunting. Okay, so, but you can see a little bit tired, a little bit on the maybe older side. Is their situation. Okay, the next slides I'm going to go quickly through, but just to show you how many lawsuits are going on. This was a really great win. It was to try to stop the oil unit 3 and 4. This is a full court case. In other words, not an injunction, but a full court case. Is the air a little stuffy in here? No? Is that right? If there is, it's like, I don't deal with it. Anyway, okay, and this was great. The judge was great, and he said, this court considers national wealth to be the rich land and the people's livelihood that has taken root there, and that being unable to recover these is a true loss of national wealth. So it was a fantastic verdict, but it was appealed, and we lost the appeal on that one, this one, okay, recently. Then other lawsuits. This is an injunction that was filed. Again, this is for Takahama Unit 3 and 4. When you file an injunction, you're theoretically, if you win, and then it's overturned, you're responsible for the lost cost, which is, of course, unbelievable amounts of money, right? So, I mean, in theory, you could be. So if you have your own condominium or house or something, you could lose everything. So it's pretty daunting. It probably won't happen, but it just might. So there are 5 people that sued here, 4 of them, very courageous. So they sued and won in the Fukui District Court. So this was a win in May 2015. Same group, same lawsuit, same district court. When an appeal is made, it's like injunction, this appeal is made in the same court, lost. This was Christmas Eve, 2015. So, win, lose. But this is important because then it's clear that now sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. That creates nuclear power, it makes nuclear power less reliable because not under the control of the utilities, who knows, another injunction might happen for a while. Even if later you win, you have to keep it shut for a while. So this is a really important message. So even winning in the lower courts is important. So you can see this is the next day, Christmas Day 2015. We filed a lawsuit from Monju. In Japan, it's like, okay, let's file the lawsuit on December 25th. And I remember going to caroling the evening before, after losing that lawsuit in Fukui, and madly going caroling. And then, I'm sorry, I'm not a Christian, but I've become kind of traditional. And then in the morning service at St. Agnes, I'm going to be there. And then the I forget you call it priest or whatever. Anyway, he said, are you staying for tea? And I go, no, I have to go file a lawsuit. So this is Tokyo here. And that's me here in the middle. But you can see the row here. This is a woman from Gifu. She does fantastic work because Gifu is downwind from Fukui Plans. A woman who started Stop the Monju with me, and she was the head of Stop the Monju for decades now. Mr. Nakajima Tetsuan, who is chief bonds at the Myosutsuji Temple in Obama. It's a national treasure temple. And he's been staunch anti-nuclear. She's a Tsuruga city, she's a citizen, a city legislator, and again, a sea of pro-nuclear people, and she's been at it for decades. And then this lawyer that's been fighting for many lawsuits from the Fukui people. But you can see kind of like, we're not all in our 20s, right? And this lawyer's been at it for 35 years. He was a young lawyer, Then, okay. So then this was the biggest win that we ever had, March 9th, 2016. By we, I don't mean like I was a plaintiff. These are Shiga citizens that did an injunction, won Takahama 3 and 4. This was really dramatic because the reactor was operating. It had to be turned off the next day. This is the first worldwide that this happened, ever. And Japanese citizens pulled it off. But appellate court in Osaka, same lawsuit, lost in March 2017. So this case ended. Then this one was an important victory, the Ikata civil injunction lawsuit. Again, an injunction. This was December 13th last year. And the Ikata plant was still not open, so it wasn't like it had to be shut down the next day, but the court said you can't operate until September of 2018, so they couldn't. They were ready to operate, but they couldn't start it. But again, that was lost this September 25th in Hiroshima. This is the Hiroshima High Court, so an appellate court was lost. Now, it gets really complicated because just with the Ikata plant, the same group of lawyers are and with other plaintiffs, various different plaintiffs, suing this reactor in four different courts, in Oita and Hiroshima, and 4 different courts, Miyazaki. And so the other one was a different place, Oita lost, and then the bottom one is a final lost in the Hiroshima court. So then Ikata restarted. You may have heard in the news, like this is a plant in Shikoku. Got restarted. It uses MOX fuel, which is a mixed plutonium uranium oxide fuel, as do the reactors in Fukui, a couple of them. Okay, so I'm going to go for maybe another 10 minutes, and then like the questions and answers. But I'd like to. The next slides are about evacuation planning. So it's like Within 5 kilometers is the PAZ. Sorry, within 10. And then the UPZ is within 30 kilometers of the plant. And then a PPA is a plume protection planning zone. And this is like if the plume comes like towards Kyoto City or whatever, then you know, there are going to be measures taken. So it's a wider range. And you can see the population there. If it's PPA, it's 11 million people. That's separate from the UPZ and everything. UPZ, if it's just the UPZ people, it's 4.8 million. And then the PAZ is 160,000. So about 50 million people could be affected by a nuclear power plant disaster in Japan. So this is official emergency planning. And this is the nuclear power disaster emergency plan drill that we kind of went and observed throughout the whole prefecture in Fukui and Kyoto. So the left is self-defense people who are going to spray the cars when they evacuate, the buses, evacuation. And then this is all training. This is the kind of evacuation that has to happen. This is actual, you know, government is planned this, and that is from Fukui. You evacuate to all sorts of areas, different places in Osaka, different places in southern Kyoto. Kyoto City is slated to accept 65,000 people from Maizuru if in case there's a huge accident. So we have to take in immediately that many evacuees. So Rishimeikan is an evacuation site. A lot of the high schools, like a lot of high schools here, like Hokoko, a place like that, Bukkyo Dainaku, all these places, Hitomachi Koryukan, all these places are evacuation sites. Okay. So, I mean, that's a lot of people to suddenly take in. And then it goes even as far as some Shikoku. So that's 125,000 people have to evacuate. So, okay, so this is a map of the places, cities that have to evacuate and where they go to. And it depends on the wind direction. So you go either south or west. So these are the cities that you go to. And we've gone to most of these cities. We've gone to all of these cities, repeated several times, to talk about evacuation plans and how it's not sufficient, it's not made, it doesn't protect handicapped people, it's not protecting young children. And so we've gone to about total, well, sometimes multiple times to places, so maybe about 100, 120 times we've gone to cities. By we, meaning about 15 people. So we have a Hinan Keikaku Anzuru Kansai Rennakai, that's Green Action is the Kyoto office for that. And so these are like examples of the submitting petitions for that. And this is not just in Kansai, we work on evacuation issues, for example, in Kagoshima, near the Sendai plant, the Ichikushiki Kino City. They were able to gather more than half the citizens' signatures saying, without a proper evacuation plan, we don't want the Sendai plant to restart. So this is like huge, but it got restarted, but these real strong statements make it so that, you know, even if you have trouble at the Sendai plant, you know, there's a big voice to shut it down again, etc. So this is really important. And so in Kyoto, one citizen and Greenpeace got the Shiga Prefecture simulation of when a huge accident would happen at Oi plant. And this is what would the data for Kyoto, because it passes through Kyoto, right? Going in the direction of Shiga. They did analysis of what if the wind blew to Shiga. And so we got this, and it was a front page headline, lead headline in Kyoto Shimbun, you know, by working with the reporter to get it in big. And this is Kyoto Shinai, that you have to do indoor evacuation. It was called indoor evacuation, meaning you have to stay inside. So that means hospitals wouldn't function, you know, you know, how do you get doctors moving from one place to another? Right now, Kyoto Prefecture has $7 million budgeted for doing a simulation. It's never done it. And I'm in charge of trying to push them and asking what kind of simulation we're going to do. And I asked them last week, and they still are saying we're having the experts discuss it. And we're saying you have to have one that shows the plans for a huge accident because it could happen. Okay, so Kyoto. This got written up in Eric Johnson, the Japan Times, let's see, 5 years ago in May, and Kyoto's cultural treasures at mercy of Fukui reactors. And we put this URL of this article on our website, and it said, like, your site view is increased 2,000 times per second. It was just unbelievable. Everybody was looking at it, so worldwide there was concern that Kyoto could be affected. And so we've always wanted to do this kind of petition, so we did at change.org, and we submitted it last May, and that's Protect Kyoto, Prevent Another Nuclear Disaster in Japan, Stop the Dangerous Oi Plant. This was before restart, asking the mayor and governor of Kyoto to not restart the plant. And 49 countries, citizens from 49 countries signed the petition, 4,629 citizens. And so we submitted it to Kyoto Prefecture. This is submitted to Kyoto City. So there were lots of really great comments. Kyoto is a worldwide cultural treasure. The people of Japan deserve to determine their own fate and protect themselves from preventable disasters. And the killing of beauty, such as Kyoto, is prime among insane political acts. And I oppose nuclear power plants when they are located on fault lines in your volcanic, earthquake-prone zone areas. Many, many, many more comments. But the city just took it and didn't do anything with it. But, you know, there's a lot that can be done with this work that we got started, I think. So then there is this union of Kansai governments, which are made up of the 7 governors and 4 mayors of the Kansai area, and they have submitted a petition to the government. The government hasn't responded. Basically what it's saying, and I just am doing the first slide here, so there's no continuation here, but basically it's that the government needs to take leadership and also make it so that we, in other words, those of us who are affected by the accident, but not the local site reactor, where the people have rights, local authorities have a right to say yes or no to nuclear power restart, but we should have the right to say yes and no. And so they demanded this of the government just ignored this, hasn't answered this, and then they really don't do anything about it after that. That's a problem. But yesterday's news, or was it today? Yesterday it happened, and today, I think it was today's news, maybe yesterday's news, is that in Tokai, the towns in that area, within 30 kilometers, are demanding a right, and they kind of got the right to say yes, no. And yesterday, when the utility said, "Oh, now that we got approval for the plant, we're thinking of starting it," they demanded a withdrawal of that statement from the utility. Is that me? No. Okay, I have the same sound. You know, it's like morning. Okay. Just a few more slides to show you kind of the other work, but they're now trying to, you know, nuclear waste, more and more nuclear waste is built up. So now they're trying to locate it. Kyoto Prefecture is suspect, also Wakayama, and so we're trying to stop that from happening. We had word from Kyoto that they would not want it there, but now that the governor's changed, we have to really monitor this. So that's building off-site storage. And then, of course, Japan has accumulated 47 tons of surplus plutonium, so there are international conferences where we're addressing that. This was organized by Citizens Nuclear Information Center and people from in another group, and we did symposiums, and I was interpreter. We went to lots and lots of members of the Congress offices. And then this is the low-cost reprocessing plant where they want to separate even more plutonium. This is in Aomori, and we're trying to prevent commercial restart of that. And of course, export of nuclear power, because Japan's trying to export to Wales and other places. And we're trying to stop that. And like Friends of the Earth Japan invites people from Wales to come here and talk about why they don't want this plant to be exported to Wales. So without a realistic policy, what will happen in nuclear power in Japan? And right now, the long-term or basic energy law, which is signed in, says 2030 will depend 22% on nuclear energy for electricity. And so, you know, that's the status quo right now. So we're trying to stop that from happening. So again, we want a new road built where this big barrier is taken off. So that's our story at this point in time. Probably kind of talk really fast and I showed too many slides. So I'm sure you're all teachers and you go, you know, maybe many of you are good at like limiting the number of slides and then others want to cram everything in. So I'm the latter. But if we could turn the lights out, and questions, opinions, anything are welcome. And we'll stop the recording right now. So, thank you very much.